Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Luke, and this is the Science Lens, where I show you how science can improve your critical thinking skills. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about a cognitive bias that causes people to overestimate their abilities called the Dunning Kruger Effect. And I'm also going to offer you some tips for recognizing it in yourself and others. Okay, let's get started. During the pandemic, a series of videos from a retired microbiologist and immunologist known by the handle SciTime with Tracy became very popular on TikTok. She made the videos as a response to misinformation that she was seeing online regarding the COVID-19 vaccines. Here's an example.
First vaccine, as it goes into your body, it has a small amount of saline and then a bunch of ingredients that are very catastrophic to your cellular system.
Yeah, there's no evidence for that whatsoever.
Then 8 weeks later, which is white blood cell reproductive system.
That's not how the immune system works.
So your ability to make another generation of white blood cells is 8 weeks.
We make white blood cells all the time, about 50 million a day. So I'm not sure what you're talking about.
After seeing how easily Tracy refuted the misinformation in these videos, I kind of wondered why the people making them seem so confident in discussing a topic that they didn't really understand. This led me to a phenomenon called the Dunning Kruger Effect. The Dunning Kruger Effect is when a person has a small amount of knowledge or skill in a particular area, and this causes them to overestimate their level of understanding. So in the clip, the person that made the original video seemed to have some knowledge of vaccines and the immune system, but not enough to realize how poor their understanding really was. The effect was first described back in 1999 in an experiment at Cornell University by David Dunning and Dustin Kruger, who were curious about the relationship between confidence and ability. In their experiment, they asked a group of students to predict how they thought they would perform on a test of humor, grammar, and logic. The students made their predictions and then took the test. What Dunning and Kruger found is that the students that predicted they would perform the best on the test actually performed the worst, and the students who were less confident going in performed the best. We can represent this effect using a graph like this one. Here is where a person has no knowledge of a topic and knows they know nothing about it. So an example could be a teenager who hasn't learned to drive yet and has no confidence in their ability to do it safely. Here is where a person knows a little bit about a topic but thinks they know it much better than they actually do. This is like a teenager having their learner's permit. They know the road rules, how to drive the car, but their confidence in their skills as a driver is much higher than it should be. Here on the graph is where they've driven in snow, they've avoided a few animals on the road, they've towed a trailer, and they're beginning to realize that there's a lot more to driving than they thought. They now recognize that there are things that they don't know, so their confidence goes back down again. Now, I actually experienced the Dunning-Kruger effect recently when I started this YouTube channel. Before I made my first video, I was super confident about how easy it would be, and I even told my wife that I would only need an hour to finish the editing because, hey, I'd made videos before, how hard could it be? Then 2 days later, after learning about titles, transitions, sound editing, green screens, and the fact that my eyes looked like this when I was reading the teleprompter, made me realize that making YouTube videos was a lot more difficult than I thought. So now, even though my editing skills are 10 times better than they were before I started, I'm a lot less confident about how much I know. Before I continue, I just wanted to make a small request that if you're enjoying the video so far, please click the like button and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like it. Okay, continuing on. So how can we overcome this bias? Well, according to the Decision Lab, if you're trying to recognize it in yourself, the best thing to do is to seek honest feedback from someone who knows more about a topic than you do. Since you don't know how much you don't know, you need an outside perspective. Be prepared though, because if you're feeling super confident about a skill and then someone who's more qualified than you tells you exactly why you're bad at it, that can sting the ego a little bit. But just remember that a little bit of pain in the early days of learning something will be better for you in the long run. So that's how to recognize it in ourselves, but what about recognizing it in someone else? This can be difficult because if you're watching a video about a topic that you don't understand, it might seem to you that the person presenting knows what they're talking about. The woman in the video from before was using a lot of technical sounding words, so a non-scientist could be forgiven for assuming that they're correct. But before you accept any scientific information, you should always check the qualifications of the person sharing it. If they're not a specialist in their field, it's possible that they're simply overconfident. Now, if I've done my job right, at least a few of you right now are wondering if I have a degree in behavioral psychology, or if this whole video is itself an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Which brings me to my second piece of advice, which is to check the person's sources. In a previous video on appealing to authority, I mentioned that assuming a person is right or wrong based only on their qualifications is a logical fallacy. So you also need to check that their sources are reliable. I've linked my sources for today's video down in the description below, so I recommend you check those out. So whether it's sharing information online, learning to drive a car, or starting a YouTube channel, the Dunning Kruger effect can present in all sorts of ways, and nobody is immune. So it's important to seek the input of experts and remember that confidence doesn't always equal competence. Well, that's it from me for today, but if you'd like some resources to help you practice the concepts that I covered, I recommend that you check out my store on TPT. There I have a range of worksheets and templates for teaching critical thinking in the science classroom, and you can find the link to that down in the description below. Also, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button if you'd like to see more videos on how science can improve your critical thinking skills. And finally, I used a bunch of resources to help put this video together today, so if you'd like more information on the things that I covered, I recommend that you check those out. For now though, that's it from me. Thanks for watching.